They met. Earlier this month, Kim Hyung Tae and Naoki Hamaguchi met in Japan, seen here posing for a couple of pictures outside of what looks like the official Shinra HQ. For those unaware, Naoki Hamaguchi is the current director for the Final Fantasy VII Remake trilogy, with him serving as co-director on 2020's remake, the director on 2024's Rebirth, and the upcoming third game in the remake trilogy. Mr. Hamaguchi, now in his role as sole director, has a position of significant status at Square Enix, and has the ability to make decisions about the iconic characters of the company's most prized IP, Final Fantasy. And of course, Kim Hyung Tae is our holy savior, the uncompromising director of Stellar Blade and CEO of Shift Up. In each of their X posts, Kim and Hamaguchi mentioned they met to celebrate Stellar Blade's PC release, and also that in their meeting they had a rich discussion about game development. Each director is known for making significant pushes and resulting gains with their respective franchises. Mr. Hamaguchi is known for giving his development teams honed-in and concise directives, which result in games that feel distinct, with a singular theme and focus. And Kim Hyung Tae, on the other hand, is known for his specific and sexy art aesthetic, as well as his steadfast ambition in creating the games he wants to make. Not to mention also his kind nature in being a studio leader that seems to treat his development team fairly and reward them thoroughly. Wow! So yes, their conversation surely included lots of reciprocatory glazing over their specific feats with Stellar Blade and Final Fantasy, as well as sharing tips and ideas with one another. But what we all want to know is whether or not they had enough time to fit in the discussion. You know which one I'm talking about. When you are in creative control of a video game character who would surely be on the Mount Rushmore of the most iconic female video game protagonists of all time, Tifa Lockhart, and you are meeting with another video game director who has begun to carve out a name for himself as one of the best in the game with regards to creating alluring cosmetic outfits, who just so happened to have delivered us two amazing cosmetic-driven crossovers with two other iconic IPs in their own right, and then you post this picture on X, the resulting question from all of us arises. Does this mean the Stellar Blade Final Fantasy VII crossover is coming next? We could speculate on what was actually discussed in their meeting ad nauseum, or we can analyze the past behavior of these two video game directors, as well as the timelines of Stellar Blade to piece together the potential answer to this question. So those wondering if we will ever get an official Stellar Blade Final Fantasy VII crossover, more specifically a way to get that elusive EVE/Tifa crossover, or even to get some Aerith and Yuffie love too, I invite you here, as I'll attempt to answer this holy grail of a question and what the answer to that question might look like. Let's dive into it. Kim Hyung Tae. In the post-launch lifecycle of Stellar Blade, Shift Up's fearless leader has been able to keep us engaged through multiple updates and DLCs, and he definitely has figured out how to keep us gorged with Stellar Blade content that is both true to the nature of the universe, being EVE's plethora of unique and eye-catching nanosuits, and in line with what we need and want. The post-launch support of Stellar Blade that Shift Up and Kim Hyung Tae are currently engaged in is working. With the recent announcement that Stellar Blade 2 is officially going to happen, anything story-related to progress the narrative of EVE and the greater Stellar Blade universe will likely be reserved for the sequel. Although it would be nice to get some story-related DLC before the sequel, I'm fine with waiting so that the dev team and writers can have the time needed to develop a truly special story. A rushed one would create a dip in quality. Kim Hyung Tae has already promised us an improvement in the narrative for the sequel, so we want to honor this promise and allow the team enough time to deliver us that improvement to the next part of the story. So waiting for more story content until the sequel is fine by me. Right now, Shift Up is definitely winning. Kim Hyung Tae has got things figured out when it comes to the post-launch support of his baby, Stellar Blade. He has the gacha games like Nikke and the next one codenamed Spirits to provide him the income and funding to continue to produce Stellar Blade content. Make the money with the gacha games, then pour that money into the resources for Stellar Blade. And with Project Spirits being the next confirmed release from Shift Up, I'm sure the studio is devoting the majority of their manpower to that. But they're still giving a proper amount of love to Stellar Blade. We've received patches that have included a wealth of quality of life improvements, including fixes to bugs and even better movement to EVE's assets, as well as an extremely generous amount of free nanosuits. And then we have the official DLC crossovers. Both Nier and Nikke have been fun ways to incorporate two IPs that are near and dear to Mr. Kim's heart. And I don't think things are stopping anytime soon. Kim Hyung Tae seems to have always been looking forward to the PC release. I'm sure he's grateful for Sony getting his studio over the hump and launching the game with the 1-year exclusivity for PlayStation, but he has stated he always looked forward to the eventual PC release. He did forecast that when it did happen, after the exclusivity period with PlayStation was over, sales would boom. And now that it's here, there has been a resurgence in popularity of Stellar Blade, even breaking records on Steam this summer. So with that newly invigorated interest in EVE and the Angels, I'm thinking we are going to get at least 1 or 2 more crossover DLCs, similar to what we got with Nier and Nikke. He's got the resurgence of interest in Stellar Blade, so now he's going to capitalize. And this is what I think his meeting with the current director of the next Final Fantasy game, Mr. Hamaguchi, was all about. We have seen similar behavior by Mr. Kim in the past that resulted in the Nier crossover, so let's look back and connect the dots to what things could mean. You may be thinking Kim Hyung Tae has met with other game directors recently, and those meetings have not resulted in any discussion or rumors of a future DLC crossover for Stellar Blade. He met with Neil Druckmann, director of the Last of Us games, and nothing became of that. But nor should it have. That meeting, as well as Druckmann meeting with many other developers, was simply a result of many game directors being around each other after the Game Awards. Kojima and Druckmann also met and took pictures as well, and those meetings didn't consist of a shared time to actually talk and discuss. They were simply photo ops of different game directors. But there was one meeting Kim Hyung Tae did have in the past that looked quite similar to what was shared by him and Mr. Hamaguchi, and that was the meeting he had back in 2024 with Yoko Taro, genius director of Nier Automata. Just a couple of weeks prior to Stellar Blade's initial launch in April of 2024, Yoko Taro and Kim Hyung Tae sat down for a journalist-covered meeting. IGN covered it. In their meeting, the two discussed what seems to be similar to the type of meeting between his recent one with Mr. Hamaguchi. In it, he and Yoko Taro shared insights and compliments to one another of their respective IPs, Yoko Taro's Nier franchise, and of course, the Stellar Blade franchise of Kim Hyung Tae. On the surface, the purpose of their meeting was to celebrate Stellar Blade's initial 2024 launch. In their meeting, Kim Hyung Tae made it clear he admires Yoko Taro and the Nier franchise. Later on, he made it known at an investor meeting that he was going to include a Nier Automata crossover. This was months before it was ever announced officially. And as a result of this, 7 months after the meeting with Yoko Taro, we got the Nier Automata Stellar Blade crossover. In order for us to have gotten this DLC, Kim Hyung Tae needed to have that meeting in order to get Yoko Taro's blessings, not to mention the need to hash out the legalities and financials of such a collaboration. Because this meeting was covered by IGN, to the public there was no actual discussion of a crossover, but I believe these meetings Kim Hyung Tae is having with different game directors is the pleasantries necessary to at least start a more formal discussion and negotiation of obtaining temporary rights for ShiftUp to develop content of the various IPs he is trying to bring into the Stellar Blade universe with these crossover DLCs. And of course, Kim Hyung Tae didn't need to go about the Nikke DLC in the same way, being the Nikke IP is also under the ShiftUp banner. So we don't have a timeline of concept to delivery of the Nikke DLC, but we do for Nier. So we could be looking at something similar for a potential Final Fantasy VII crossover. Again, I am not saying this is a surefire bet, but based on the timeline of events that led to the Nier crossover, we could potentially get a Final Fantasy VII crossover in about 7 months or less from now. There's no way to know at this time if we're going to get such a crossover definitively, but things were discussed. And based on past behavior of those involved, we can at least speculate with a little more than just hope that the DLC may in fact come to be. The Fantastical Crossover. Now that leaves us with the excitement over the prospects of what we could actually get in a Final Fantasy VII crossover. The most obvious answer is that we would get the Final Fantasy VII inspired nanosuits for Eve to wear. Seven's 3 female party members, Tifa, Aerith, and Yuffie, all have an iconic look. And through the remake trilogy, we've received more outfits for each that have started to become iconic in their own rights. What I'm sure Eve would get would be all 3 classic outfits: Tifa's white crop top and black suspenders, Aerith's red short sleeve jacket and pink house dress, and Yuffie's green turtleneck crop top and leather gauntlets. Then we would get the other outfits we saw in Remake and Rebirth, the mature look that gives us a blue and red dress to Tifa and Aerith respectively, the sporty look that sees Tifa in a gray and blue cheetah print inspired owl dye, and the exotic look that results in Tifa wearing a kimono inspired dress. And then, of course, we could also see Eve don some of the Costa del Sol swimsuits that were made popular by Tifa and Aerith. Of course, Yuffie has some too, so we can't leave her outfits out of the fun as well. Eve could definitely make any of these outfits pop even more. And in addition to the outfits, we would definitely see the hairstyles of the female Final Fantasy trio make it into the DLC as well. Tifa and Aerith have some pretty unique ones. Tifa's long hair and hair buns, as well as Aerith's default hairstyle, would no doubt make it into the crossover. Now, what else could we get? In addition to the unique outfits that were provided to Eve through the Nier and Nikke crossovers, they were also delivered to us in fun ways. In Nier, we got Emil's Shop on Wheels, where we could purchase the cosmetic outfits and hairstyles after collecting stellar tears. And when Eve came upon one of them, she performed a move that paid homage to 2B's iconic no-look sword slash she did in Nier Automata. In the Nikke crossover, we were able to interact with Volt and Scarlet in the Wasteland, to then be sent on a mission. We also got to experience third-person shooting in the shooting range minigame, as well as a boss fight with Scarlet. The Nikke DLC was a really more expansive one that gave us much more than just the cosmetics, with a variety of gameplay experiences that were new and fresh. So if things continue to trend upwards, we could get something even more expansive in the potential Final Fantasy VII crossover. What I could see as a fun way to merge in the Final Fantasy universe is to introduce Mako, that universe's name for Earth's life stream. In Stellar Blade, Earth has been ravaged by the colony extinction. Mako from the Final Fantasy VII universe could flow upward through Earth's surface and give life to a location in the wasteland or the Great Desert, to make a hub for Eve to access the crossover. This is a perfect way to bring in some biodiversity and contrasting color to the bleak red and brown biomes of the wasteland or the Great Desert. Imagine a river of Mako coming up from underground that results in a beautiful growth of green vegetation, out in the dunes of the Great Desert, or up through the mounds of trash and rubble in Digger's shop in the wasteland. A mission or two that involved the incorporation of Mako in the Stellar Blade universe would be something really unique, and at the same time be a great way to pay respect to Final Fantasy VII's lore. And with Nikke's DLC bringing over Scarlet from that universe as a character to converse and have a boss battle with, we could only hope to get something similar. The incursion of the Final Fantasy universe could bring Tifa, Aerith, and maybe even Yuffie as well to a Mako-drenched location in the wasteland or Great Desert. And to top it off as a truly impressive DLC, the Shift Up team could even give us a boss battle with one or more of the aforementioned female trio, or make it something truly special and give us a boss battle with Cloud or even Sephiroth. Wishful Thinking. Based on what we received with the Nier and Nikke crossover, I do think everything I mentioned previously is reasonable to expect. But I do think there is a possibility of more. So why don't I share 5 more Final Fantasy crossover possibilities that I'm calling my wishful thinking. First up, I would love the ability to incorporate more of the crossover content into photo mode beyond only being able to photograph Eve in the new nanosuits. Inserting characters of a crossover next to Eve in order to have her pose with certain crossover characters would result in some awe-inspiring photos. Currently, we can take a picture with other characters if they are within Eve's orbit, meaning if we want to take a picture with, say, Orisa, Raven, or Taki, they need to be near Eve when we pause the game and go into photo mode. Wouldn't it be amazing to be able to simply place characters, including any that we get from a potential Final Fantasy VII DLC, next to Eve to get shots that feature the angel and other characters in interactive poses? We've seen pictures of these posted online way back when Stellar Blade first launched. These pictures were definitely put together in Photoshop, but they seem to be the exact character models used in Unreal Engine 4. So why not give us this ability in photo mode? It would be awesome to have Eve and Tifa do a photo shoot together. Images like this are all over the Stellar Blade Reddit page already. Having the ability to place characters next to Eve, to have, say, a total of 3 to 4 at once, that we can arrange in different poses that play off one another, would really take Stellar Blade's photo mode to the next level. Okay, second, Eve can summon the drone to essentially have an arm cannon. Who else has an arm cannon in Final Fantasy VII? Can we get Barrett's arm cannon implemented into gameplay? Instead of Eve summoning the drone, could we get a skin that has his arm cannon attached to Eve? It would take a new animation for Eve to execute as well as the creation of a new arm cannon asset for her, but wouldn't that be worth it? Third, how about the ability to use some new blades? I'm hoping we'll get to utilize different blades in Stellar Blade's sequel. This would result in both a variety of the look of each blade, as well as their hilts that are kept in Eve's hair, not to mention open up different gameplay mechanics. Raven's blade is the cryo blade, and Taki's blade essentially uses tachyon particles. This was included in Stellar Blade's lore, but didn't make its way into the gameplay. We only had one blade for Eve to use, the Blood Edge. The ability to have multiple gameplay mechanics introduced via different blade abilities will be awesome for Stellar Blade 2. Just imagine using a cryo blade to slow or freeze enemies, as well as a plethora of other potential blade types and resulting abilities for the sequel. But with a potential crossover DLC for now, we could just get the appearance of new blades, inspired from Final Fantasy VII, because this IP too has some of video games' most recognizable blades in their own right. Wielding Sephiroth or Cloud's iconic swords in Eve's hands would definitely put a smile on my face. Fourth up is to find a creative way to bring in Red 13. With the Nikke crossover, we got Volt. So why not bring in the dog of the next IP that Stellar Blade crosses over with? Could we see Red 13 as a companion to Eve? This seems like a tall order. Red 13 would not only have to be created as an asset, but he would need animations and AI behavior programmed into it by Shift Up's dev team. But maybe a compromise could be a Red 13 inspired nanosuit. I could definitely see Eve rocking some red hairlocks that flank her ears. Not to mention, Kim Hyung Tae does love to design outfits and characters with tails or draping fabrics. Similar to the tail we see on Eve's prototype nanosuit, I could definitely see a Red 13 inspired nanosuit that includes a flaming tail dangling behind the cheeks of Eve. That would truly take our third-person gaming experience up a notch. And finally, the fifth thing on my wish list to see would be the inclusion of chocobos. The Nikke DLC gave us the third-person shooting minigame, so what could that leave us for the Final Fantasy crossover? Why not let us experience some chocobo racing in a minigame of its own? This could lead to chocobos racing around the oasis of the Great Desert or the junkyard of the wasteland. I remember pouring hours into chocobo racing and would love to see that realized in the Stellar Blade universe. I wonder what the Natiba would think of having chocobo all over their turf. I'm really hoping the next Stellar Blade DLC is what will eventually come about as a result of these two game devs meeting. Come on, Mr. Kim and Mr. Hamaguchi, give us this crossover. Alright guys, that's it for this video, a little more of a fun one for you guys. Let me know what you would want to see in a potential Final Fantasy VII/Stellar Blade crossover, and also what you think of the possibilities I laid out. See you on the next one, have a good one, and may your memories live on forever.